We're living through one of the most transformational moments, I think, in human history. This is the final normal year, right? Everything after this point is going to look radically different. The way that we do work is going to be radically different. And the question is AI going to take my job? Here's the good news. We don't know. We know that the genie is out of the bottle when it comes to AI. That genie is not going to go back in the bottle. The people who use AI are, having a much bigger impact on productivity than people who are not. If you don't do it today, your competitors might, and don't let that happen to you. I would be very happy to hear that our competitors are taking the approach of let's see how it plays out.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening to another episode of Data Innovators and Builders. This is your host, Saket Saurabh. Today, I'm speaking with Michael Domanic, VP and Head of Generative AI Business Strategy at UserTesting. Michael, thank you for chatting with us today.
Saket, thanks for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
Super excited, Michael. Would love to maybe start a little bit with your background.
Yeah, as you said, I run AI transformation at UserTesting, which means that my job is to look inside the organization and help leaders and individuals across the organization bring AI into their roles to add rigor and efficiency to essentially almost everything that we're doing. I've been here at UserTesting for just over 7 years. I've had a lot of different roles in the organization. Before joining UserTesting, I was actually a customer of UserTesting. And that was back when I was building chatbots for companies during the first hype cycle, I think, of AI. So I think of the first hype cycle probably lasted from around 2015, 2016 to about 2019, 2020. And that's when every company felt like they needed an NLP chatbot in places like Facebook Messenger, in Alexa, in Slack, in Skype. So I was the character building a lot of those experiences and then coming to UserTesting to test them.
Awesome. I think there's a lot of rich experience that you're bringing into this AI role that you have. And congratulations on winning the OpenAI System Builder of the Year award. Tell us a little bit about what the award is and how you got to that.
Yeah, so that actually comes through. So OpenAI has a champions group, which is a group of enterprise customers, folks leading AI across their enterprise. Yeah, so I've been a pretty active member of that group. I think I'm one of the founding members of that group. And yeah, so this is the first year that they had kind of given out awards in different categories. And I think that they're recognizing me for building durable systems here at UserTesting that will allow us to continue to use AI in interesting and meaningful ways in our business that will allow that transformation to happen.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on that. Super excited for this and for your recognition in the work you're doing. You mentioned that you're bringing AI into the workflows within UserTesting, right, across different functions. So give us a bit of a perspective what that means. I know almost every enterprise is thinking about doing that. So how have you gone at it? Is there a sequence to that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's certainly a lot to unpack there. So I think maybe a good place for us to start here is, why does an organization like UserTesting need a formal transformation program? I feel like every company, essentially probably every company of over 100 employees needs a formal AI transformation program for two reasons. One is the opportunity. So reason number one is opportunity, and reason number two is responsibility. So in the opportunity side, it should be pretty clear to most of us by now that if we are really thoughtful about the ways that we bring AI into our organization, to augment workflows, to enhance the things that we're doing, add rigor to the things that we're doing, there's incredible opportunity for us to, again, like add that rigor and add that efficiency across the company. So that's the opportunity side, and certainly there's a lot more to unpack there too. But on the responsibility side, I see responsibility as having two different branches to it. So the first branch of responsibility is the governance piece here. So that is making sure that we're providing our employees with pathways to use AI responsibly and ethically. So that could mean that certain data classes and certain use cases are off limits because we want to make sure that we're fulfilling our obligations to our customers, to our stakeholders, to our employees. And there are certain use cases where we'll say, these are things that, would violate some responsibility we have to them. And then the other side of responsibility, I think, is the responsibility that organizations have to their workforce. A pretty bold statement that I've been making over the last year, and I think there's probably a lot of people that would agree with this, is we're living through one of the most transformational moments, I think, in human history, right? And I do believe that if you're a company that advertises yourself as a great employer, you have a responsibility to lead your workforce through that transformation. This is going to impact all of us, right? There's no one that's going to be left untouched by this transformation, and we want to make sure that all of our employees are given the enablement to grow with this transformation.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree, right? How we do our work is fundamentally changing. And if the people that are working in our teams are able to learn through that transition and become that much more AI first and AI enabled, and that has happened in coding, that has happened in marketing, that's happening across every function, I think we are helping them build a better future versus, sort of saying that, hey, we're gonna it's up to the people to learn on their own and figure it out, and either you make it or you don't make it, because the learning curve is different for different folks. I see, absolutely well said, right? And let's maybe double click first on the opportunity side, right? Opportunities is vast abound. And I've also seen like people sometimes overestimate the opportunity and like, oh, everything can be done with AI, and then sort of, go back and forth in there. How have you approached that opportunity in, being realistic, and maybe what outcomes are you seeing there?
Yeah, I mean, like we're certainly not trying to boil the ocean, right? Like we don't see AI as a solution to absolutely everything, but what we're trying to do is bring AI capabilities into our workflows in very pragmatic ways. So, I mean, there's a lot that you can do to make that happen, right? But essentially, what we teach our workforce is that there's no such thing as an individual contributor anymore. Like that does not exist. Every one of us is managing a team of at least three people. So every one of us all day long has an intern, we have an assistant, and most importantly, we have a thought partner with PhD level expertise in nearly every subject sitting next to us all day, every day, right? So like I think like that's the first thing that we should be thinking about is how do we bring this team now that we're managing into the most meaningful things that we're doing as a business? And teaching people and getting into the practice of doing that is a big part of how we approach this. But then when you pull back and you look at, UserTesting is a SaaS company. We operate on a SaaS model, right? So that means that there are three things that we need to be doing really well in our business. The first is we need to be providing pathways to grow our revenue significantly. The second thing is we need to retain our customers. And then the third thing is we need to increase product velocity. So when you're bringing AI capabilities into an organization and you're teaching your employees how to use AI, you can certainly do a lot, right? Like, it's nearly infinite number of things that you could be doing. But where we try to get really focused in our leadership is on those three things. So growing revenue, retaining customers, and increasing our product velocity because we know that those are the things that will have the most meaningful impact on our business.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I like this sort of managing aspect. Like those three team members that you're managing are basically different AI functions, and in some ways, I think it has empowered the IC a lot more because that as an individual person, you can actually go a little bit more end to end. I've seen that in engineering specifically, like a product manager can go from concept to prototype to maybe something functional, and same thing for engineers. Like they can go much further in maybe defining what the user interface should be by use of AI, and things like that. But I think the people who can manage these assistants well and sort of understand how their task breaks down is really key to getting success there, right?
Yeah,
Um,
and like like those three things are obviously really important to us. those are not the only three things that we'll say we should be doing, but those are the three things that we'll get really focused on. So if someone in HR wants to improve an HR process, then yes, we should definitely be doing that, right? Even if it's not fitting directly into one of those three things, because look, most things that we do in our business are going to have either a direct or indirect impact on those things anyway. So we want to do those things. And look, this is hard, right? Like this is not easy. It's not a matter of just turning on models and telling everyone in the company that they have a team of three people working with them all day. This requires systemic change, top down, bottom up change, and there's a lot of different ways that we work to enable our organization to do this. It's not something that happens overnight. We have been doing this for nearly 2 years, and we're just now at the point where we're looking back at the last 2 years and recognizing, here are the things that we've done really well. Here are the things that maybe over-indexed on or under-indexed on. So this is a constantly iterating thing.
Okay. So what practical sort of advice might you give, right? I mean, you say it's not just about, hey, here is an AI tool and here are the three sort of things you can leverage it in. Like, are you running workshops and training sessions showing people how it's done? Like, what are some of the practical things that people can take away from?
There are a ton of enablement initiatives that are happening. So, I mentioned this as like a top-down, bottom-up approach. But the things that we do on a very regular basis to provide that enablement is basic stuff like monthly lunch and learns that teach folks in our company how to use new capabilities, how to use existing capabilities with AI. We put a spotlight on people doing interesting things already. So that way, if you're in sales and you see how your colleagues are, using AI in interesting ways, we'll put a spotlight on that so that you can see how your colleagues and again your peers are doing this. I host a weekly office hours where anyone in the organization can come in and talk about any AI topic at all. It could be things that they're working on. It could just be like existential AI transformation, right? So anything under the sun. We have an ambassadors group, Center of Excellence, which is a group of about 2 dozen people. We're about an 800-person company. So we have about 2 dozen people in our ambassadors group, cross-functional group, and they're raising their hand to say, I'm going to spend a couple hours of my week every week teaching my peers, teaching people sitting next to me or adjacent to me how I'm using AI to transform the things that I'm doing as someone in marketing or someone on our HR team or as a developer, right? So there's kind of this like systemic approach to this enablement, and this is ongoing. I think the mistake a lot of organizations make now is they'll turn AI models on for their workforce, and they'll do some basic upfront training and say, okay, like we're on our way to transformation, right? Because we've provided people with some basic enablement and models, and this is just all going to happen on its own now. And I think what we've seen is that is usually not the case.
Okay. And did you have to change some of the incentive structure as well? Because one of the things I've seen is, people, at least in some cases, felt like if they use AI to do the work, they don't deserve the credit. But like, no, your success is your success, right? Kind of thing. Like, did you have to do something there?
I mean, that's certainly something that we talk about a lot. I think when I look back to when we first started this formal transformation journey and started giving people access to AI tools, there was certainly a hesitancy for people to say like, "Oh yeah, I used AI to do this." And I think we've turned the corner on that, because I think a question that I continue to ask everyone in the organization that did anything meaningful, especially our leaders, is tell me how you used AI to achieve the thing that you're talking to us about. And if they don't have an answer, or if they say like, "Oh, I didn't use AI," my frank response is, "Well, why the hell not?" Right? Like, why not use one of the most powerful tools to enhance the rigor of the things that you're doing? Like, I think this is a cultural thing, right? Like, you've got to teach your organization that using AI is somewhat of a responsibility, right? Because that's a tool that we're making significant investments in. that we roll out to the organization, and we know that that tool has the capability to enhance the things that we're doing. And for those that do talk about it, right? We put a spotlight on those individuals and we say, this is why this is such an incredibly valuable person in our organization because they saw an opportunity to experiment with a new capability and having done that experiment, they achieved this incredible outcome, right? Continue to do that across your organization and you can watch that culture shift.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a very good point. So across the teams, would you suggest like there is a specific function that companies should focus on initially and go one after the other, or is it like just go across the board? Like what's worked well for you?
I mean, it might depend on your company. For a company like ours, there wasn't one specific function where we said, "Hey, like let's get really focused on this." We know that AI has the capability to enhance pretty much all of the work that we're doing because user testing is a knowledge work company, and that's where AI fits really well into. And I don't think that there's engineering might be on its own island because AI from the start has been talked about. Uh, it's being talked about as like an engineering enhancing tool, like a developer enhancing tool. So I think that there's just some I think it's built into the nomenclature, right, of how we talk about AI. But when you look at the rest of the functions across the business, I don't think that there's anything specific about the marketing persona versus the sales persona versus the HR persona or the finance persona, even that makes it a better fit. I think really this comes down to the leaders that are leading each of those different functions, how they talk about AI, how they engage their teams on AI. Like I think that is actually what makes the biggest difference.
Hmm. And how does this work functionally? Do the teams come up with the ideas of what they want to do, or are you specifically sort of guiding them in a certain direction?
I think it's both. I think that's kind of like the top down, bottom up approach. I think a lot of companies are not focusing enough on the bottom up approach. I think that's really critical. One of the ways that we do this is so we use a number of AI tools at user testing. Our center of gravity tool of our transformation over the last 2 years has been ChatGPT Enterprise. And we got really early on, as soon as the capability became available, we just became really interested in custom GPTs. And that's something that democratized across our organization. We love custom GPTs for a number of reasons. One is they're, if you take the right approach and you try not to make it too complicated, a custom GPT often fits really nicely into repeatable workflows. And what we say to our organization is we do a lot of training on this and we've done like hackathons on GPTs. But what we say to the organization is, everyone in the company has the access to build these things. So like let's go experiment, right? Like not all those experiments are going to lead to something valuable, but the experimentation in itself often is the point, right? So we'll say to our organization, build custom GPTs. If you're building a GPT that has relevance outside of just yourself, we will work together to evangelize usage of that GPT. Sometimes there's two GPTs that are being built in tandem that solve the same business case. We'll get involved and we'll merge the capabilities of those things, right? And I think like that has had actually a really big impact on our transformation journey because it gives people some ownership over customizing the thing for yourself. And I think it's also giving people a lane to experiment, which might actually be the most important thing to do right now. So again, like a lot of GPTs that people are building don't actually lead anywhere. They don't, leave the experimentation lab per se, right? But what it's doing is again, like if you've built a GPT and again, if there's not like additional utility beyond the experiment, what you're doing is you're probably discovering some aha moments about other ways that AI can help your role. So we just try to encourage that as much as possible.
Yeah, yeah, and I think when I think about some cultural aspects also based on what you're saying, right? The two things I find that one, people who are naturally curious and are kind of going out there and maybe watching some YouTube videos or seeing some, things that people are doing and trying it on their own. And then people who are willing to experiment. So that willingness to experiment and curiosity are sort of some cultural aspects that help. Um, but not everybody has that. And it's one of the parts of the organization when you talked about the responsibility part is how to sort of make that happen because we're all different, right? And some people are not naturally experiment driven or as curious as others. Just wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, correct. Like I'm not
Yeah,
expecting everyone to go in and have that same level
yeah.
of like curiosity, creativity, experimental mindset. Like that's fine, right? We don't need everybody to have that, but there is a critical mass of individuals that do have that. And when you give them a lane to play and experiment, you're giving them the ability to say like, "Hey, here's a problem that I deal with on a regular basis in my role. I think I can bend this capability to add value to this thing." And then if they do that, then they can go to maybe the people who aren't as creative, but they've already built the solution for those people. And I think that's had a really big difference in the way that we've moved through our adoption journey of AI.
Yeah, yeah. And when I talk about curiosity and experimentation, I feel like that's kind of the core essence of user testing as a company itself, because I'm building a product, I'm curious how people will react to it, and I'm willing to experiment and try different things and sort of gather that data, right? So maybe tell us a little bit about how AI has been sort of coming into user testing from a product perspective itself, right? With you can ask questions to AI on almost anything, right? So
I
yeah,
think you're right. Like, I think culturally we did have a little bit of a head start here.
yeah.
I think this actually goes back to 10 years ago when I was building AI solutions and I was a customer of user testing and testing them inside of user testing, right? Like, I think that there was some natural curiosity about the way that user testing played in that space at that time. I joined the team and then in 2019, I think it was 2019, we started building, our own homegrown ML models. So we didn't start our journey with, in November of 2022 when ChatGPT was launched. We started this journey on quote unquote AI a while ago. And I think that gave us a little bit of a head start because it's already something that we were thinking about building our product around. I don't think we were thinking as much like internally. I think that there were like some use cases of potentially bringing in machine learning to augment workflows, but most of the focus was on our product at this point. But yeah, I think doing that early on helped give us that cultural head start that prepared us for the moment when we entered this big hype cycle that we're in right now. So, you fast forward to November of 2022, ChatGPT 3.5 comes out, and there were already enough of us in the organization that were pretty engaged already on the conversation that we recognize how important that thing was. And then our journey really at that point pivoted into our product. And then we started thinking very early on about how do these capabilities enhance value when we bring it into our product? How is this going to enhance the value our customers have in our product? So we really got focused on some of the bigger bottlenecks of you know the workflows that our customers are in when they're using our product. And that's where we started building some Gen AI solutions. And that continues to proliferate, right? Like there's more ambition than we have resources for right now, right? So that is something that continues to enhance our product.
Yeah, yeah. And uh, what's the state of the art there, like, in terms of AI itself, sort of mimicking user personas and things like that?
So I think that there's a lot that we can do, but
Hmm.
really what we're doing right now. So I mentioned earlier that the first problem that we tried to solve was one of the biggest bottlenecks that our customers experience when they're in the process of capturing insight is, you come to user testing, you launch a test to test maybe a prototype that you're working on, right? You get 15 people that come back with a lot of feedback, right? And these are video sessions. And each of those videos are probably anywhere from like 20 to 25 minutes times 15. It takes a long time to parse out the critical insights. So when we first started bringing generative AI into our platform, that's the problem that we uh, directed our efforts towards, right? Is let's bring Gen AI into our platform to help our customers more easily spot what those critical insights are when people are giving them feedback about their products. And this continues to proliferate, right? It's also in helping you understand, now it's developed into helping you understand and target the right personas to get feedback from, helping you set up the right set of survey or qualitative study questions, and then now it's also across all the work that you're doing on our platform. What are the trends that you're seeing as far as insights go? Where might there be opportunity for you to enhance your strategy based on what we know about the things that you're testing, right? So there are so many things that we could be doing, and we continue to, we continue to push the creative buttons to get really focused on adding that value for our customers.
Yeah, I think talking about your journey into user testing, right? You were previously already working on natural language
Yeah.
driven chat, and you said you were a customer of user testing at the time. Um, um, Given how much of the user experience, the customer experience is driven by LLMs right now, would love to get your take on that particular aspect of the market, actually.
I'm not sure if I understand the
Like,
question.
having come from the experience of building, customer facing chatbots with natural language way back, like well before language models, right? And now
Yeah.
it's like one of the hottest areas of applying AI. But I'm still seeing sort of at a user end, I still see some friction and challenge, like, hey, I don't want to talk to an AI bot and get me
Yeah.
to a person. Like, yeah, I mean, where are we headed and in that direction, or just from your expertise?
Yeah, look, I mean, looking at the big picture is when we were building NLP chatbots for customer experience, in that first hype cycle, all of those experiences were garbage. They were just really bad, and that's simply because the technology wasn't ready to deliver on the expectations of customers. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I think part of going through that moment set expectations, maybe in the wrong way around like
Yeah.
what chatbots should do and what they should be doing. And I think like a lot of people having had bad experiences in that first hype cycle still remember the pain of like trying to get a NLP chatbot to do just answer basic questions, right? So I
Yes.
think that might drive a lot of the hesitancy that consumers have today. But look, I think that it's really critical for any company that wants to build a consumer facing or customer facing experience with AI is you need to first understand what is it your customers actually want, right? And that's where user testing comes in. We talk to our customers about this all the time. Pretty much every one of our customers is trying to figure that out right now, is what are the right set of AI features that we should be delivering to our customers. And a lot of times, like obviously you can't make guesses here, but um, if you can give your customers simple ways to solve significant challenges with AI, I think that they're maybe even at that point not even recognizing that it's AI that's helping them. They're just, you're just creating a more frictionless experience for them. And I think that like every company is gonna have a different version of this. So before you start developing, like get into discovery mode research, right? Like get into that phase, understand like what are the friction points that your customers have, and where might AI be a solution. And then once you start prototyping what that solution is, go to your customers, right? Like and see if that's something that they would even be comfortable, if that's an AI solution they would even be comfortable using.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look that much different from a typical product discovery, right? Or
Yeah.
life cycle stages, right? So you're going to do your discovery research, you're going to build a prototype, you're going to get feedback on the prototype, you're going to build something that has a little bit more functionality, you're going to get feedback on that, right? So point is like continue to get feedback throughout the development life cycle.
Yeah, and I think one interesting sort of move that has happened, or movement that has happened in the software industry, is that more companies are not just about providing tools to customers as a SaaS service and then going out of the way. Instead, the role of the FDE has come in, where they're actually working to build a final solution for the customer. So I think you deliver a platform with an FDE, you're working with the customer, building a solution, and I'm guessing there's a lot of feedback and learning happening in that process, which previously may not have been the case, right?
Yeah, well, I think you're talking about something different now, and that
Yeah.
is the way build product, right? So the
Yeah,
way
yeah.
that we build product is changing all of the time. So now we have all of these like rapid prototyping and vibe coding tools. That means that build something that has more functionality much earlier in the process, right? So like that's something that our PMs can do before they even deliver specs to an engineer. And they can say like, here's how I think that this thing should look, right? And let's before we even get into like specking this, like here's the vision for this product, right? And you can again take that and bring that to your customers and get feedback on that. But certainly these capabilities are changing the way that we build product.
Hmm.
But going back to what I was saying earlier,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think the process of getting feedback and where you get feedback, I think that that's still largely the same.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking that that is there, but then you're maybe getting even more of a feedback through the full life cycle as your product gets adopted and used, and you have an FDE there. So it's not just like in the early phases as you're building the product, but also you become a user of your own product trying to deliver a solution sometimes, right?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. The key thing here is make sure that you have feedback before making the investment to move to the next
Yeah.
stage, right? And that's always been the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think user experience has become extremely critical because a lot of other layers I would say are becoming, you know, more and more look similar in some ways, right? I mean, a lot of, I think, we're all using different LLMs and stuff, but a level of intelligence is expected almost in every product today.
Yeah,
And the user experience matters a lot at the front
I
end.
totally agree. You know, I wrote a predictions piece a couple months ago about what trends we might see in 2026. I actually think the role of the UX researcher and UX designer will be significantly elevated in importance this year. And the reason why is, you know, again, like going back to the fact that we have more ambition than resources, right? And now these tools are making it a lot easier. So they're lowering the barriers to building product. And that means that we can build product faster, but we still need to get it's not any easier to build the right product, right? Like we still need to get feedback. We still need to make sure that we're doing this in the right way that delivers against the expectations and adds value to our customers. And that's where your UX researchers and designers are going to add significant rigor and value to that process of building product.
Yeah.
So we're going to build more, right? Like all of us are going to build more product. We're going to ship more product in 2026. That means we need to get really, really tight on how we're getting feedback in everything that we're building.
Yeah, and I think what I'm seeing myself in our work day to day is that UX research aspect has also evolved quite a bit because part of our product is a conversational one where there's a lot more text and verbosity, and you have to get it exactly right both in terms of latency of response and what you say. But then there's a generative UI aspect to it, which is also trying to balance that not everything in a enterprise product can be conversational, so you have to also sort of bring up the right sort of visual artifacts along with it, and that's a very different model than the old SaaS, like everything is buttons and menus kind of thing, right?
Yeah, totally. And again, like that's something that I think every company's trying to figure out is like, what's our version of this? How do our customers want to talk to our
Yeah,
products, right? And we're all figuring that out now.
yeah, yeah, very much, very much. um Early in the conversation you mentioned that you think of yourself as a system design person. Am I saying that correctly? And would love to maybe have you dive a little bit deeper into what you mean by that.
Yeah, I think we're all going through this like transformational moment right now, and I think the impact that that transformation will have on us is we're all going to be doing work differently. If you Greg Shove, I don't know if you know who he is. He's the CEO of a company called Section, and he said something interesting on a webinar a couple days ago where he was discussing this idea of like the last normal year for businesses. And I think he was saying that like this is the final normal year, right? Everything after this point is going to look radically different. It's going to feel radically different. The way that we do work is going to be radically different. And if that's true, that means that we need to think about how we're redesigning the way that we do work, the processes, the workflows, the systems, right? All of that needs a redesign, and we need to figure this out so that we're prepared for how different the future of work is going to be. And I think this gets back into what we were talking about earlier, right? It's that responsibility piece is if this is the final normal year that we're all in and everything looks weird and different next year and the years beyond, we need to help prepare our employees for that. So there's an intentional design that's involved in this transformation journey. And that's essentially what I mean by that.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's extremely thoughtful. And I would say I sort of agree that the normal is shifting very quickly. And especially, at least in my perspective, uh, the coming of the coding tools and how coding changed itself fundamentally. And that has happened in just the last 12 months or so. That's one part of it. The vibe coding aspect. And then the MCP and other things that are connecting systems together. These have been big shifts in just the last 12 to 14
Yeah,
months.
and we didn't even talk about like autonomous agentic
Yeah,
capabilities yet, right? So it's
yeah, yeah.
like when you start introducing that into the things that you're doing, the workflows that you're doing across the business, like work is going to look very, very different in the future. We're doing a lot of experiments with those right now. I think one of the big focuses of user testing for this year is bringing in, a robust orchestration tool that will allow us to build and orchestrate agents to meaningful workflows around our business. Um, that's going to give us the possibility to do more as a company and again, like continue to add rigor. So as we do these things, the work that we do is going to continuously shift. It's going to look different, and we need to be really, again, intentional about designing what that looks like for everyone in our company.
Yeah, yeah. And since we're talking about all these changes, when executives are asking about ROI of this work and the transformation, what are you measuring and what would you recommend people to measure?
So this gets a little bit challenging here, right? So there are a lot of schools of thought on measuring the ROI of AI. One school of thought is you don't measure the ROI of AI because it's like electricity, right? Like it's just table stakes at this point. Like you bring AI into your organization because you know it's going to have a big impact. I am sympathetic to that point of view, but there's some nuance there. I think that you can measure meaningful implementations of AI, and this is something that we do at user testing. So on a quarterly basis, we look at the 10 most meaningful implementations of AI in the company, and we essentially what we're doing is we're measuring the before and after state of those implementations. It's a little bit easier when the implementation is happening on your go-to-market team because we're already measuring the impact of everything that we're doing there, right? So we know that if an assistant or an agent increases the number of discovery call bookings in a specific quarter, we know the value of every discovery call that we do, right? So we can actually develop an ROI model around that. Same thing with number of campaigns. Every campaign that we do has a specific dollar value to it. If we lower the time and increase those campaigns with the same level of resources, we can pretty accurately calculate the ROI of doing that thing. But yeah, I think like that's where you want to get focused right now. I think, like when it comes to measuring value, I think of AI, I think there's like two ways of looking at this. I think that there are squishy metrics and I think that there are hard metrics. And I think the squishy stuff is, again, the stuff that feels table stakes. We know that this is important. We know it's going to add value. We can't quite calculate what that value is today, but we just know it's important. And then there's the hard metrics, which is a lot of the stuff that we just talked about is when you measure the before and after state of bringing an AI, solution into a workflow or into a part of the business, you can start to get a little bit tighter on what the actual value of doing that thing was.
Yeah, I think it's good to look at both aspects because if you take a very financial, like dollar in, dollar out measure, and that may not have a real outcome in a year's time frame or a 6 month time frame, but that doesn't mean you stop doing that, right? And so you have to have that innovation perspective because this, as you said, work is changing by itself.
Yeah, and I think a good way that plays out is like the harder to measure, squishier stuff is. I think one of the values of having an AI transformation program is it makes recruiting easier, right? One of the things I talk about all the time is if you're looking for a job in 2026, one of the most important questions that you should be asking any prospective employer is, tell me about your AI transformation program, because people want to go and work at a company that is providing the enablement, right? They're providing the tools. If you're given the option of, two different companies, one company is like, we're not really organized around AI. Like, yeah, maybe that's important, maybe not. And another company is super hyper focused on it. I'm pretty sure you're going to choose the company that's more hyper focused on it. And, if it makes recruiting easier, there's probably some measure that you could do there. But like at the end of the day, it's like, you have to have a great answer to that question, right? As a company, if someone's asking you, tell me about your transformation program, you better be prepared with a pretty good answer to that question.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's a good question to ask and see, are you going to invest your time in a place where you actually get to grow with AI and, make your career growth sort of aligned to where the world of work is going anyways. But talking about jobs though, like, do you still see the concern about job security as you're telling people to adopt AI? Is like, is it taking my job, and
Yeah.
is that coming up as a concern?
So this is probably one of the trickiest
Hmm.
things to kind of figure out at this point. Here's the good news. On the question is AI going to take my job? Here's the good news. Or well, actually, let's start with the bad news first.
Yeah.
We don't know. Yeah, we don't know. Here's the good news. We don't know, right? So that's kind of where we're at today. Is any predictions that people make about the level of job displacement when it comes to AI, we're really just like shooting from the hip. It's a shot in the dark. There's an equal possibility that AI is going to have a detrimental impact on job displacement. There's an equal likelihood that it will have a net positive impact, right? So here's what we do know today is we know that the genie is out of the bottle when it comes to AI. That genie is not going to go back in the bottle. We know that we're living through, one of the most transformational moments. The people who use AI are, having a much bigger impact on productivity than people who are not, right? So at the end of the day, like it's up to each of us to make a choice of which path that we want to follow. I would certainly encourage people to engage today, right? Like I'm not telling everyone that like you need to use AI all day every day, but engage, right? Try to figure out like what is this thing going to do for me that's going to benefit me. It's going to maybe add productivity, my personal life, my work life. We're all just going to have to get really comfortable being in experimentation mode for the next few years because this thing is not going to slow down and it's not going to.
Yeah, I think it's a very fair thing to say, like, hey, the honest answer is we don't know. And perhaps for all of us is like, let's get on with the wave and see where it goes. Better to be with it than oppose it, because I think that it's almost impossible to oppose that force of change that is happening, right? Um, so it's better to be, I guess, aligned to that and
Yeah.
get better in what we do with it.
Right.
Yeah,
And I think, again, this comes back again to the responsibility piece of
yeah,
employers to lead workforce through the transformation. I don't see that enablement happening anywhere else. Right. So, again, like we advertise ourselves as a great place to work. And a big part of that is we take, AI transformation very seriously. It's a
yeah,
responsibility.
yeah. Right before the start of the conversation, we are talking a little bit about what's happening in the AI model world, and we have some very big companies. In my perspective, I used to think that they're all models are getting almost very similar, but I'm seeing them diverge in their own ways with their focus on different aspects. And we're talking about the Super Bowl ad that was coming out, but I do see the companies are sort of specializing in specific types of, like, whether it's code generation or more enterprise use cases or more consumer friendly experiences, or so between Gemini, Claude, OpenAI, and all of these. What's your take on that? Like, um, how would companies sort of adopt these, perhaps based on the differences?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it will depend on the company. I could like the thing that we're really focused on right now is probably less so on model capabilities and more so on the tooling that each of these companies is providing. So you go back 2 years ago, and you roll out a tool like ChatGPT or Gemini or Anthropic in an organization, and it's like there was a lot of like, we got to try to figure this thing out, right? Like, how is this thing going to impact the things that we're doing? But what we're seeing is more and more, each of those frontier models are now developing specific tools that solve specific problems in an organization. Um, 2 years ago, it was really hard to connect your data. Now, with through MCP and like there's these like out of the box connectors and a lot of tools, like that becomes a lot easier. That's really important, right? Because we know that bringing more context into the things that we're doing with AI is going to enhance the output. It's going to enhance the value of the thing that we do. So I think that's where the difference gets made today. All of these models are incredibly powerful on their own. They transform so much of what we do. But it's a lot easier to make that transformation happen if the model provider is building a specific tool that solves a specific problem. Um, Coding is an easy place to talk about this, right? Because there are a lot of purpose-built coding tools in these models that make, building, reviewing, uh, makes that a lot easier. But what happens when you're in sales? What happens when you're in finance? Right? Like, what are the purpose-built tools that will impact those individuals and help them use the capabilities to, again, like add that rigor and enhance the work that they're doing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of exciting stuff to come, and maybe as we get to the close of the conversation, if you'd be willing to put on your sort of future hat and you know, tell us what you think, where we go in 5 years, and what might be some of the mistakes or right decisions that people would take structurally in getting AI first as a company.
Yeah, I mean, like making a 5-year prediction right now feels really risky because it's, like even a 5-month prediction might be a little bit challenging. Look, you asked about mistakes. I think maybe the biggest mistake a company might make today that they'll look back on 5 years is not getting serious around formalizing the transformation. Like, I think that's critical, right? I think a mistake that a lot of companies are making is they'll say, okay, we're a Microsoft shop. We're going to turn on Copilot, or we're a Google shop and we're going to turn on Gemini, and we'll provide some basic training, and we're on our way to transformation, right? And I think that we've seen that happen. We've seen that play out enough now to know that that doesn't work. And a lot of companies haven't really come to the realization that transformation has to get formalized. AI transformation is not the side gig of 2 dozen people in your company. AI transformation requires dedicated focus and dedicated leadership. And I think that we have seen that the companies that have done that have made very significant progress and have very significant momentum towards that transformation. If you don't do it today, your competitors might, and don't let that happen to you, right? Like, I think get really serious about the transformation. Um, Whether it's a head of AI, a chief AI officer, like whatever it is, right? Like, make sure that you're consolidating leadership around someone who's capable of leading through the transformation.
No, I think that's an incredibly important point, because I've heard from folks that, hey, let's see how it plays out and then we'll get into it. But maybe they will miss out on all the early learnings and mistakes and the relearning and, all of the frustration as well that you deal sometimes working with AI. But I think they all become learning moments in a way. And if you don't go through those phases, you can't just land into a perfect AI execution, right?
Yeah, I would say, if I would be very happy to hear that our competitors are taking the approach of let's see how it plays out, right? Like, if I heard that our competitors are doing that, that would make me very happy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think this is very well said. You're doing an incredible work, of course, in understanding and bringing the organization into becoming sort of AI native and making it part of their job. I feel like your framework of thinking as you're not an IC with but three different assistants or people that you're working with. I think it's a great framework, and totally agree that I guess the time is now and go through that sort of process of learning. So thank you so much. This has been a great conversation, Michael. Thank you for being here, and it's been a fun learning conversation for me as well.
Yeah, thanks, Saket. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today.